support the appointment of the chairperson of the Board of Directors of Central Bank, Wakili Andrew Mukite Musangi. Honorable Speaker, as the chair of the committee and vice chair have noted in their committee report, Mr. Andrew Musangi is an accomplished lawyer and a very good professional who has served in various other capacities and therefore passes a bill, and following his vetting by the committee, Honorable Speaker, I want to agree with that committee that indeed he is a professional who fits the bill to serve as the chair of the Central Bank of Kenya. Honorable Speaker, Mr. Musangi succeeds another lawyer, Advocate Mohammed Nyaoga, who is the immediate former chair of the Central Bank Board. Honorable Speaker, I don't know what preference is there for lawyers to head this board, but probably because they have done well before, Honorable Speaker, but I don't support Andrew Musangi because he's an advocate or a lawyer, but more so because, as I said, he's an accomplished professional, a man whose integrity is unquestionable, and I want to encourage Andrew Musangi to continue working as the chairperson of the Board of Directors of the Central Bank without entertaining anything that would jeopardize either his own integrity, that of the board, or of the management of the Central Bank of Kenya. Andrew Musangi now heads a board, Honorable Speaker, that is also under very capable leadership at the managerial level under PS, former PS, Dr. Thube, who is now the governor of the Central Bank of Kenya, and former PS Susan Koech, who is now the deputy governor of the Central Bank of Kenya. Honorable Speaker, it is my prayer and hope that as they govern the Central Bank of Kenya under Chairman Musangi and this board, they will work to ensure that the integrity of our financial or banking sector is safeguarded, Honorable Speaker. That Kenyans put their money in banks knowing that that bank will not collapse the following day, Honorable Speaker. It's my prayer, Honorable Speaker, that this board will ensure that the current management of the Central Bank of Kenya works to ensure that not just the monetary policy of our financial system is stable as the current administration seeks to stabilize the economy, but also the supervisory role of the central bank is actively involved in the day-to-day supervision of banks, Honorable Speaker. And talking about banks, Honorable Speaker, this goes also into other financial sector institutions that are governed under the Central Bank Act. And particularly, Honorable Speaker, having under this administration established the Hustler Fund. You know, Honorable Speaker, before we had issues with predatory lenders, especially in the digital space. And I'm glad that this now has been sorted out by the Hustler Fund, that to a large extent now Kenyans can be able to borrow money, not by going to Shylocks, but going, just dialing the prefix digits for the Hustler Fund and accessing funds without having to know anybody, Honorable Speaker. And this is a progression, Honorable Speaker, that we want to see Central Bank encouraging even our banking sector players. That tomorrow, Honorable Speaker, you do not need to know any bank manager or any credit officer in a bank to access credit. Honorable Speaker, that banks will be encouraged now to develop products like the Hustler Fund, where business people, on the basis of their credit rating, can be able to borrow and access credit in this economy, Honorable Speaker, without necessarily having to know anybody. Honorable Speaker, I will speak about the supervisory role of not Parliament, but of the Central Bank of Kenya. In the past, Honorable Speaker, we have seen laxity. And Kenyans get surprised when a bank collapses and there is a run on a bank when Kenyans walk into that bank to try and withdraw their money, and they are told, oh, sorry, you can't withdraw your money, the bank is collapsing. Honorable Speaker, it is my prayer that under Andrew Musangi, the board will ensure that the supervisory role of the Central Bank of Kenya over the banking sector is efficient and effective. And that means they must do this work almost on a daily basis, Honorable Speaker. And it's not enough, Honorable Speaker, for Central Bank to sit, officers to sit in the Central Bank of Kenya and expect to just review reports sent to them by the banking sector players. They must conduct impromptu checks on banks, and especially where it is said, Honorable Speaker, in English, by the English or whoever said it, Honorable Speaker, that there is smoke, there is fire. So whenever Central Bank hears or smells smoke in any bank in this country, Honorable Speaker, they must know there is likely to be fire and be proactive to ensure that they safeguard the assets of the Kenyan people that they put in these banks. Honorable Speaker, let me not say much because it's just an approval process, but I request members to indeed agree with the committee and support Mr. Andrew Mukite Musangi to now serve as the next chairman of the Central Bank of Kenya, as we encourage him to serve with diligence, serve with a high sense of integrity and a high sense of nationalism and patriotism, knowing that he's now charged with the responsibility of safeguarding huge assets, national assets, and assets belonging to many depositors in this country when he serves as a chair of the board of the Central Bank of Kenya. With those many remarks, I beg to support.
The Honourable Member for Funyula, Professor Wilberforce.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker.